Hello, hello, everybody. I wanted to talk to you today. I was actually trying to figure out what I wanted to record for this week's podcast, and I was walking in the woods with my dog. And this is kind of what came to mind as I was when I'm deciding what type of episodes I want to record and what I'm going to say and all of that. I'm always kind of trying to tune into you guys and the energy of my people, whether they're, the people that I'm interacting with in my Facebook group or in my DMs or in my email, or maybe my clients and things like that. And this is kind of what came to me. And it was a beautiful walk today. It is the day of this recording is December 2nd, and it was 70 degrees here in Asheville, North Carolina. And I was out in the woods with my dog, like I said. And this is just kind of what struck me. And I have been just getting so much great feedback from you guys, especially so many of you have been sharing with me, how Spotify does the like best of or like your most listened to, et cetera, of the year. And so many of you guys have shared with me that this podcast is on your list, which is such an honor. And it's so crazy to me because this didn't even exist a year ago. And I'm just so, so, so pleased that this is helpful for you guys. And I love talking strategy and tactics. I love going into the specific details of things like content and marketing and sales and all of those things. But I also, when I created this podcast, I aimed to make it different from a lot of business type podcasts, especially in the health and fitness industry. And so, one of the things that I have always put a really heavy emphasis on are the mindset pieces, the thought pieces, just the energy pieces, right? There's so much more that creates success in a business than what meets the eye, right? If it were all just strategy and tactics and it just required implementation and execution, then anyone with a good plan would be successful. And we know that that is just not true. That's not how it works. And I think for what I've learned over doing this for so many years in my own business and in coaching other clients and things like that, is that it's the unseen stuff that will actually get you the results, right? And so I wanted to talk a little bit with you guys about today about really where success and where results in your life and in your business, where they ultimately come from, why they exist, and all of that. And I just want to share my thoughts on that with you guys today, because I think that when most of us are starting a business, it is typically from a place of pain, maybe a place of desire, right? So let me kind of share what I mean by that. So when I decided to start Authentic Conversion, it was 100% from a place of pain, right? I had sold my gym a couple years before. I'd been doing fitness business coaching, working for another company, and I loved it for a while, right? And during the time that I loved it, I was not thinking about branching off and doing my own thing. But I have mentioned this before, it got to a point where every single day, every single meeting was just incredibly painful. It was awful. I didn't like how I felt. Everything about it was terrible. And so it really reached this breaking point where it was like, okay, do you stay miserable or not anymore? And so Authentic Conversion, it was in my heart for a long time, right? Like I always knew that it existed. I didn't know how everything was going to play out, but I started the business ultimately from a place of pain and from wanting my life to change. Okay. And I had known that I could be successful because my gym was successful and my clients that I was coaching on business were successful. But I've talked about this on the podcast before, so I won't go too far into detail with it, but there were a lot of fears and that kind of thing coming up because it was just, a later time in my life. It felt like there was more on the line. It was less certain. So anyway, all of those things were coming up. And so ultimately I started the business from a place of pain. Now, when I started my boot camp, it was really from a place of desire, right? And partial pain as well, because I had just moved to this small town, didn't know anyone, and there was like no real options for jobs or anything like that. And so, I had to figure out how to make something work. But really it was more desire driven. There wasn't as much urgency. There certainly wasn't as much fear around it, although I have no idea why, because starting a gym is like so scary right now that I think about it. But anyway, I always kind of believed that that was going to work. So businesses, I think, are often born from pain or desire. And that's kind of where they start. And they start about us, right? So starting Authentic Conversion was Nicole is miserable in her job. She has a skill set. She wants to help people. She wants her life and her income and all of that to change. So she's going to start this business. And that is fine. And that is a great place to start from. And many of the clients that I bring on, or the prospective clients that I talk to, they want things to change for their family, right? Or for themselves. They want to be able to homeschool their kids or stay home with their kids and still make money, or they want to be able to leave a relationship they're unhappy with, or they want to get out of their full-time job that they don't love, whatever the thing is. It's funny. I work with a lot of teachers who want to leave their careers as well. And I don't know if that's just because that's my background. But anyway, there's like a million different reasons that someone might start a business. Okay. There's a million different reasons. And in the beginning, I think it really is mostly for us, for our family, for the immediate things that we see in front of us in our life. And what you'll notice is over time, it is no longer about you if you're going to be really successful, right? And I don't mean it's about your clients, because of course, if you're a coach, you're doing what you do because you want to help people change their lives, because you want to help them have this transformation, and you get, that's like why you exist, what your purpose is. But what I found is that building businesses, and especially making a lot of money in businesses, that at some point, just doing it for the clients and the client transformation, and especially just doing it for yourself, it's just not enough to keep you going. Right. And so what kind of transpired for me when I had my boot camp was I ended up getting pretty involved in the local humane society, did lots of fundraisers, donated money and that kind of stuff. And I adopted 4 different animals from them. And for me, that was like an extension of why I was doing what I was doing. And it made the work that I was just doing so much more meaningful, so much more impactful. And it was just really such a powerful thing. And I think with authentic conversion, I started making money pretty quickly in this business. I've mentioned before, I worked for about 3 or 4 months totally for free, kind of building my audience, adding value. I made just a little bit of money for like the first 5 months I had my business. But then once I launched my coaching program, things really took off. I went straight to 6 figures, a little bit beyond that, and never really looked back. And so, less than a year into my business, I was generating $25,000, $30,000 a month. And that was steadily growing. It was very stable. It was steadily growing. And that was really exciting for me in the beginning. Okay. And it's not to sound ungrateful or anything like that, because I'm so grateful for all of the money that my business generates and all the people I get to help and all of that. Right. But there was a time, and I specifically remember this, it was about 11 months into having launched the Marketing Intensive, which is my signature coaching program. And I was at this conference, and it wasn't great. It was like a 1-day workshop, but one of the things that kind of came up for me in that workshop, where it was really about kind of like planning your dream life and your dream business and all of this stuff. And my takeaways had nothing to do with me, right? What ended up happening is at the end of the day at that workshop, I went back to my Airbnb and I made the biggest charitable donation that I had ever made. And it was scary. And I don't know why, but I just felt so compelled to do it. And after I did it, I just felt a new sense of purpose in my life and in my business. So this first donation, I bought a well for a community in Kenya. And it just renewed me in the most powerful way. And some of you have probably heard me talk about this before, but then I got really serious about looking for an organization that supported a cause that had been on my heart for 10 years. And it's a pretty obscure cause. So it's not like, a cancer organization or something or humane societies where they're just everywhere, right? So just to back up a little bit, I have a master's degree in Holocaust and Genocide Studies. That is an actual 2-year degree. And in my final semester of graduate school, I was doing an independent research study, and I can't even remember how I stumbled across this. I have no idea how it happened, but I ended up doing this independent research study on child soldiers in Sierra Leone. So, if you don't know anything about Sierra Leone, it's a country in West Africa. It's a very small country that suffered the most brutal civil war from 1991 to 2002. And a lot of it had to do with the blood diamonds, right? So, the organization that I was specifically looking for was an organization that supported Sierra Leonean blood diamond victims. And the reason that that was so important to me is because a lot of what I read about and a lot of what I learned about doing those studies was the specifics of what I did was, again, more around child soldiers, their rehabilitation, reintegration into society. But of course, in researching all of that, you just learn about the what and the why behind the war and how things played out. And just the level of atrocity really struck me. And again, I was getting a whole master's degree in Holocaust and genocide studies. All I was studying was atrocity. And at that point, also, I had been to tons of different concentration camps and ghettos and museums and things like that all across Europe, was in Auschwitz. And 6 months after that, I had gone to Cambodia to do an independent research study on the Cambodian genocide, which was gritty and incredibly brutal. And very, very unlike Europe. What I saw in Cambodia was very raw. Like you could pick someone's tooth up off of a site if you wanted to, whereas everything in Europe is much more protected. And I was really struck by all of that. And when I was learning about what was happening or what had happened in Sierra Leone, I don't know why, but I was so pulled toward that scenario and those people. And of course, many people were just brutally murdered, but many people were also brutalized in a way that I just find to be so horrifying, and that they were forcefully amputated. And I don't know what it is about that idea that just struck me in such a absolutely horrific and horrendous way. But I knew that one day, and this was 10 years before I actually started, I knew that one day I was going to work and help the blood diamond victims, specifically the amputees. And so I think what made me think about doing this podcast, by the way, is that this past Tuesday was just Giving Tuesday, and I set up a fundraiser for the organization that I work with, which is called Melkosh Mission International. It's MELQOSH, Melkosh Mission International. And they're one of the only organizations that specifically works with blood diamond victims. And so what we do is we help the victims themselves still get medical treatments, because honestly, the country, and I went and visited and volunteered in September of 2019, the conditions are absolutely horrendous. People are still suffering from their wounds, and as if it just happened and it's been 20 years. And so we help with the medical treatment side of things, but we also help with the children of the amputees. And many of them are orphans now because the amputees die at an exponentially higher rate. So we help their children get education, because education is the only way there, the only way to get out of that suffering. And so I got involved with this organization, and it gave me, just like donating and buying this well, it gave me an entirely new purpose in my life and an entirely new drive. And this is a total side note, and this is obviously not why you give, but when I started giving more and getting more in touch with my purpose outside of myself, and that my success had really nothing to do with me, my income in my business actually drastically, it was like month over month over month, I was adding another $10,000 to the bottom line of the revenue. It was crazy. And of course, the more you make, the more you give. And I actually believe the more that you give, the more you make as well. And so when I went to Sierra Leone, I just knew, it was a really hard experience, to be honest, seeing all of these people who are wounded and literally sick and dying, and having people walk up to me who, had the rebels cut off their arms and legs, or their feet and their hands. And some of them were infants at the time that it happened. I met a man who was older now, who had been just forcefully blinded, like the worst things. And we met with them, and they really are trying to do amazing work and make a better life for the amputees and the rape victims and the war wounded, because some of the people were wounded also in horrific ways that had nothing to do with amputation. But I mean, we did everything from going into different schools and providing uniform fees to there was one day, and it's a day I will never forget, where I went to this village with about 60 women. I gave donations to about 60 women who had been raped, and they had nothing. And like one woman walked up to us and she was late for the meeting that we were having, and she was crying and her baby had just died. But life moves on, right? Because that's the current conditions. And so, and on that same trip, I met a couple of boys. There were actually four of them who were desperate to go to school. There was no funding, and I decided I'm going to put them through school. And so when all of that was transpiring, it just made me realize that my business, it almost has nothing to do with me, right? It has everything to do with my client transformations, and it has everything to do with how it allows me to contribute to the world. And I think I wanted to share this because I want to encourage you to get out of your own head and to get out of your own way in the way that you're looking at your potential or your success or whatever is holding you back. Because I always tell my clients that it is your duty and your responsibility to make as much money as possible because of the impact that you get to have in the world as a result. And that work is, I mean, there, sure, maybe there's coincidences in life, but it is no coincidence that I found that cause, that 10 years from the day I graduated, or from the month I graduated graduate school, that I found Mel Kosh Mission International, that I found an organization that specifically did the work that I wanted to be involved in. It's no coincidence how any of this has played out. And I know that I have been put in the position that I am in because it is about so much more than me. And in addition to that, about a year after that, I came home from a trip. I'd been in Central America with my dog for the winter, and we came home early, and there was the pandemic. And my dad came to me and told me that my parents were in a bit of a dire financial situation and that they needed help. And ever since then, I've been contributing to them and helping them to be able to stay in their home. And I mean, if I had not had that miserable experience with a job, I would not have had any of this impact, right? I don't know where my parents would be living. I don't know how these four boys would have gone to college. I don't know how, some of the kids I met would have gotten school uniforms. Like, it's just, you look at the ripple effect of what your success can do, and you realize that you are an instrument in changing the world. And of course, oh my gosh, it goes without saying, like, my clients rock my world every single day. Like, they are the best. I am so fortunate to be able to support such great people. But when it comes to success, like, having made a lot of money over the last couple of years, sure, I have, a nice car. That's not really my thing, but I did buy a nice car. I was driving around in an old beat up car with a tape deck, making like almost $500,000 a year. And I was like, this is ridiculous. So I did buy a nice car. But like, you can only go to so many, nice dinners and buy yourself stuff. And I don't really like I don't know. I don't like lots of fancy things. I don't wear jewelry or anything like that. So there's only so far that you can go when it's just about you. And so whether you are struggling to make lots of money or really move ahead, but I'm really speaking to those of you who are at that startup place where you have all of this fear, or, there's a lot of the unknown and you're really in your own head. I just want to encourage you that it's going to be about you at first. Okay. But as the fear seeps in, and it inevitably will, and as all this stuff comes up for you, I want you to remember the greater impact that you are going to have if you are bold enough and you are brave enough to push through and create the success in the world that is your responsibility. It is your responsibility. You were put in a position where starting a business or having a business is an option for you. We're having an online coaching business, which is like one of the most lucrative careers you can be in. I have clients in their 20s making more than doctors and lawyers and, all the prestigious careers. And you were put in this position because you have a role and a responsibility that goes so far beyond you and even beyond your clients. And so, what I just want to encourage you guys to do is think about it. Like, think about, what is your cause? What is the thing that drives you? What would you give money to if you could help anyone? And there's no right or wrong answer, right? There's a million different causes that need your help and need your support. And so when you always make it about you, it's really easy to allow the fear to stop you and to get you stuck. But when you can see what's possible, not just for yourself, but for how your success will impact and influence the world, that is where the magic happens, my friends. Okay. So I'm telling you, and you might be sitting here listening to this and be like, why didn't she give me some strategy? Why didn't she tell me what to do in my content? Right. But the unseen things make more of a difference than all the strategy, all the tactics in the world. Who you are, your belief systems, how you show up, the alignment that you're living in, how you think about how you want to contribute to the world, all of those things will be much greater contributors and creators to your own success. So I hope that this brings a new or different perspective. Maybe this is already something you're on board with, which is great, but think about it. How can you use your success or the success that you desire if you're at the beginning? How can you use that to have a greater and more powerful impact on the world? Because as coaches, that's what we're here for. I'd love to hear your feedback. And if you are moved by this topic, I would love to just share Melkosh Mission International, phenomenal organization doing work with blood diamond victims. I will put a link in the show notes to their website where you can donate. I'll also put a link in the show notes to, we filmed a documentary while I was over there. So it's about 30 minutes all about the blood diamond victims and what's happened in Sierra Leone. And if you feel so moved, I would love for you to take a look at that as well. And as always, I invite you to connect with me over on social media, share your feedback. I have been loving it, you guys. So good. And you can do that. I'm Nicole Spencer on Facebook. You can jump into my free Facebook group, Authentic Conversion Organic Six-Figure Fitness Business. You can find me on Instagram, nicole.authentic.conversion. And I hope that this moved you to find and create more success, because that is what entrepreneurship is all about, with that ripple effect that you get to have in the world. See you in the next episode.